Welcome to Mixed Vibes, where we take a look at all things holistic and healing. Before we start, please take a moment to subscribe to our channel.
All right, welcome to Mixed Vibes. I'm Maurice Carroll.
And I'm Janice B.
And in today's episode, we're going to discuss some common stereotypes and myths that we often hear about in holistic and spiritual practices. Yeah, this is going to be a good one.
It's going to be a long show.
But before we do that, let's get into one of our segments called The Crystal of the Day.
Yes, we need to have the little applause background when
Right.
it comes on, right? The crystal of the day is malachite. And malachite is one of my favorite stones. Malachite is known as the stone of transformation. So when it's time for a change or a rebirth of thought, malachite is the stone you want guiding you. It's going to help you heal on a physical and emotional level, removing anything that's making you feel weak or toxic. And by removing all of the impure energies in your life, you're also stimulating the positive life force in your body and your aura. It's a beautiful green color.
Yes, it
Yes,
is.
that's one of the reasons I love it. Of course, heart chakra, right? But it symbolizes the healing green of nature around you. Most green stones work on the physical level. They really do work with healing your body and the nature connection, whether it's a malachite or a different type of stone. The color definitely has a lot to do with that. It's going to open your eyes to the beauty of the world and make you more aware of how you can use everything that surrounds you to make yourself better, happier, and more at peace. Interestingly enough, it's also a great stone for travelers. I know moonstone is. That's for traveling over water, but for malachite, this is just one to kind of keep you calm and safe when you're traveling. So if you're somebody that gets nervous driving long distances or over bridges or, you're afraid of heights on the plane, whatever, malachite's a good one to take with you. The only negative on malachite is it can be poisonous. So if you have a tumbled stone, if it's got a break in it, you don't want to put it in water. You're not supposed to like infuse water with crystals. Yeah. You don't want to do that with malachite if it has any kind of a crack. I would say don't do it at all just to play it safe because it is poisonous, so it could harm you. That's the only negative about it, but it's absolutely my favorite stone. Definitely check it out.
So, question.
Yeah.
Since it is green, and we know green is heart chakra, does malachite help with that at all?
With your heart chakra?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right.
I think that when the heart center is the center of your body, right?
Right.
And maintains the health of your body as well.
Right.
And that the green earth energy is a part of that as well. So it all works together. You know the deal.
Yep, I absolutely do.
But let's get into today's topic, stereotypes and myths. And we were kind of laughing about this, but there are so many misconceptions about healing work and spirituality in general, right?
Right.
And I know we've both encountered a lot of different ideas and comments and maybe some pushback from people when we first started moving towards this like healing and energy work journey.
Well, the reality is that a lot of us, we have a tendency to judge what we don't understand.
Absolutely.
And so it puts us in a position where if you don't get enough information, you try to pull your own conclusions and then go off with your own conclusions and try to make your assumptions and then move forward from there. If that's not the case, then in certain situations, you're just kind of told what to think. You're around people that have strong opinions. Yeah, we're not doing religion. So you have people that have strong opinions about different things, and they tell you what you should think. And this is going to be kind of me doing exactly what I'm saying. What people, we always make assumptions about what we don't understand. My judgment on things that I don't understand is how we are in an age right now where information is at your fingertips with your cell phones, with your computers. You have search engines that you can use to very quickly find the answer to whatever it is that you might be assuming. And I don't understand that. I don't get it. Because for me, it's just like, well, if you're speaking from a place that you don't know for sure, you can at least look it up and find out, some facts about whatever it is.
Do you think though that people don't? It's not a question for them, so you don't think about looking it up if you're living under with these blinders. And I don't want to say blinders, but if you're living with the perception of what you've been told is right and wrong, or whatever it is, you don't think, let me look this up.
That's true.
Right? That's
That's
a
true.
part of kind of the awakening we talk about sometimes, where people are starting to question things,
That's
right?
very true. That's very true.
And then it's like, well, now let me look it up. And people who are very happy with their judgments and walking with their judgments, whatever they are,
right.
don't look things up.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. And and still, that's a problem for me because, again, we're in an information age. And even if that's what you're told, I guess my thought pattern is, even if that's what I'm told and that's what I'm like, say, for instance, with holistic practices, and I'm told that they're satanic, they're demonic, you want to stay away from them. I would want to get more information so that I can defend why I'm against it. You know what I mean?
So you can be properly armed.
Yeah,
with the right
So
knowledge.
For me, it just feels weird when people specifically talk about holistic practices and they call it satanic or demonic, or they call it witchcraft, and without having more information. And I really believe that if you found more information, if you researched more information, you wouldn't be so quick to categorize it in that sense. So for me, it's like one of those things where you say, well, excuse me, ma'am, sir, whatever pronoun you address yourself as, do you really know what you're talking about?
Could you explain what that is?
Yeah, like okay.
What is your firsthand experience
if
with
say,
Satanism?
Yeah. What do you think it really is?
Right.
And then I don't know how I can imitate the voice on Morpheus. Like, well, what if I told you that you're probably practicing witchcraft too?
Right.
You know
exactly.
what I mean? And it's like one of those things where when you make a judgment call without information, and then somebody puts that same question back in your face, it forces you to think. And so my judgment, I'm guilty of it, things that I don't understand. And I'm making a judgment call. I don't understand how in today's society, when you have information at your fingertips, even if you're told that this is how it is, why you don't look it up, why don't you find out the information for yourself, even if it's to support what you've been told. It's a little disconcerting to me.
I think there's also a lot of, we know that there's a lot of brainwashing in general of our society, right? In all aspects, right? The same way, in different topics, the same way as someone saying something is ghetto or hood. And I'm like, and I put the question back like you just said. I do exactly what you said. I'm like, oh, have you been to a ghetto? Well, no, but what makes you think this is ghetto? What does a ghetto look like to you? What's hood? What does that mean? I mean, look, I want you to tell me what, because I want you to say what it is you're really saying, and then let's talk about that, because that's a dangerous stereotype, right? You're assuming things about people, and it's the same thing when I occasionally have to educate people on social media about white privilege, and I'm like, Google's free, What is white privilege? Just look it up. But they don't want to hear it. They don't want to know it because they don't want to
admit to it.
And also, the people with the stereotypes and the myths, they don't, they're afraid to look it up sometimes. They're afraid. They've been told not to look it up. Because looking it up is satanic. Is of the devil.
You're
questioning the higher ups.
Right.
How dare you look it up? We're watching your computer. We know what you're looking up.
Right. And then those same people will look at people who say, oh, I looked it up and now I understand, or I looked it up and I've grown to this point and of knowledge that I get it. Or as the term I believe is still a thing where you say, "Oh, I'm woke." You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
And to be in that stage, and knowing what a myth actually is, what a stereotype actually is.
Right.
And okay, so let's go to the dictionary, so that way I'm not talking out of my mouth. So I'm gonna go, all right, because I have it here. So let's define a myth. A myth is a traditional story widely held, but is a false belief or an idea, and is usually about an early history of a people, or is about natural things like phenomenons,
Right.
that usually involve something supernatural.
Like
Now,
Bigfoot,
yeah, thank you, thank you,
the Loch Ness
thank you.
monster.
I was thinking, I was like, what can I think of that won't be offensive? Those are both really good.
Right.
And like when you have things like that, a definition of what an actual myth is, it puts it back up in your face. And so when it's put back up in your face, it makes you have to reconsider, well, what do I actually believe? What is a myth? What is a stereotype? Or in the case of what we're talking about, like what is Satanism? What is witchcraft? What is, you know what I mean?
Right.
It puts
And
it in
and
your
those are
face.
not the same things either.
Right.
Well, speaking of witchcraft, that's one of the biggest ones we hear, right?
All the
Anytime
time.
from every modality we do, whether it's crystals, healing touch, Reiki, readings, speaking to spirit, whatever it is, tarot, it's witchcraft. And it's interesting, but I guess it's not really surprising.
Not anymore.
But I want to define witchcraft, and it's hard to define the word witchcraft because there's a lot of different definitions of it depending on who you're talking to, right?
Right.
If you're looking it up in the dictionary, or if you go to Google
Right. Can we use that, please?
and look it up, it'll say something like witchcraft is a type of magic that involves casting spells and divining the future. Historically, witchcraft was often associated with folk medicine and healing. So let's think about that for a moment. Okay.
Whew, so many things to say.
Oh, listen, we could go on all day on this one. But the word witchcraft has many meanings, right? So over time in different parts of the world, it's been dangerous to be accused of practicing witchcraft.
Right.
Well, we could do the whole history of witchcraft. That would be a whole separate show altogether.
Yep.
Definitely worth Googling, though. It's very interesting the way the powers that be flip
The progression.
things.
Yes.
To take your power away
Yes.
and oppress you.
So they
to
can have the
use
power.
your rituals, which is pretty interesting.
Right.
Anyway, but it is still dangerous in some places to practice witchcraft or to practice that ritual, whatever it is. But for some, witchcraft is simply the practice of the Wiccan religion, while others see witchcraft as evil involving dark forces or magic. And I think that's the people we normally get. The ones that think, they're watching too many horror movies. They think that we're with our Ouija board, conjuring stuff and putting spells against you. But really, anytime throughout history that anybody practices a ritual or a belief system or modality that appears to be outside of the norm, I don't like the norm.
Right.
The norm is depending on who you're talking to.
Right.
But more specifically, the church or religious businesses, as they're called a witch or accused of practicing witchcraft. So if you're doing something that's outside of what your church is telling you, what your religion is telling you, what your scripture is telling, what you think your scripture is telling you, you're a witch immediately because you have somehow denounced God in general, which I don't get that either, but okay. A lot of times it's directed at women.
This is true.
It's often women,
This is
where
true.
there are plenty of warlocks, if you want to get technical. There's plenty of men.
Right.
Should we wait for this to pass? Okay. But there's a lot of men that practice witchcraft.
Try that again.
You want me to pick up from where I was?
Go back 2 steps, 2 or 3 steps.
Okay.
Right before you said, do I want to wait for this to pass?
Okay. So it seems to be directed more to women than men a lot of times for whatever reason. That's always the way it is, I guess. But but there are plenty of men, of course, who do the same practices, and if you want to call them warlocks or whatever. Also, if you wear a lot of black, you're a target.
Yeah.
I remember growing up, I wore a lot of black, and one of my friends' moms was, "Are you depressed? Are you into devil worship?" I'm like, "What?" Just like black. I just want to look slim. That's all it is. Oh. But we know, you and I know people who practice witchcraft.
Yes.
Like as a regular practice.
Yes.
And honestly, a lot of those people have these practices that are passed down as like sacred rituals from ancestors. It's something they learn from their mom, from their grandmother, from their relatives, from their culture. And they still practice it today. And it's not an evil thing. It's generally just the same way you would go to church or whatever you do. They're doing their own practice. And sometimes they go to church as well. It just depends on what they're doing. We talked about spirituality and religion on a previous show. So I know we're going to be dipping back over there. I don't want to keep getting into that. I don't want to repeat all of that. But the truth is there's so many religious practices that use rituals, that being a Reiki practitioner or a crystal healer has nothing to do with your religious beliefs.
Right.
And there's people that will tell you, if you are reciting something, if you're making a vision board, that's witchcraft. If you're writing down something to manifest it, that could be witchcraft.
Right.
If you are drinking blood and eating the body of someone, that could be witchcraft. So there's a lot of things you can call witchcraft, and a lot of times we're not thinking about the things we already do that would be considered witchcraft to somebody else. So
Right.
it is definitely a dangerous stereotype sometimes. Definitely can be dangerous.
It is.
But it could be, it's just it can be a part of your faith-based practice or totally separate, however you want it to be. And I know there's people who still do, but at one time thought acupuncture and chiropractic work was work of evil forces. I had a boss one time that said she didn't believe in chiropractic. She didn't believe in it. I'm like, I don't think it requires your belief. It's not. That's not what's happening here. But this is still happening now. This is the way people feel. So it's definitely something that hasn't stopped for sure. But I think as things become more mainstream and they're covered by major insurances, that's a big one. Medical insurance, those kind of archaic beliefs about putting needles in you or adjusting you or putting hands on you, and even Reiki, doing energy work, that kind of fades away. It gets to be more mainstream.
It's weird because when you do things like that, like when you're practicing acupuncture or chiropractic work or Reiki or things like that, that are still at the point of us recording this, it's still new to some people.
Yeah.
It's still
or
one of those,
very forbidden, kind of like
or questionable.
Alternative.
Like, how does that work? Alternative medicine, things like that. It's funny to me because if, again, going back to what we talked about earlier with having information at your fingertips, it's one of those things where if you looked it up and you found out what is needed, you will find out that there's training that has to happen. You have to be certified in a lot of these things, and it takes time. And so, for me, if you don't know that you have to be trained in it, but you're judging it, prematurely, prematurely meaning that you didn't look into it to find out what needed to what needed to happen in order for you to call yourself a chiropractor or acupuncturist or a Reiki master. If you didn't look into the processes of what that is and you have information at your fingertips, then who's holding that myth?
Right.
Who's creating a stereotype if you don't use the information that you already that you clearly have?
Right.
And it's one of those things like where you can have people who have the intention of helping you, and they might. So if I have the intention of helping you, and you're always complaining about lower back pain, and my intention is to help you. And I say, okay, well, lay here on this table and fold up like this, and I'm going to jump on your back. You know what I mean?
I'm going to stick some needles in you.
There's a certain amount of question that comes to your mind with it. If you're in a position where somebody comes to you and they say, well, my intention is to help you with your energy, and I can help you because my intention is to help you.
Or
Well,
I naturally have this gift, right?
right, yeah, that's the other
That's the
thing.
other
Like,
one.
yeah, well, I was told I'm being led to be, or this is my calling. Okay, that's all great and wonderful. I can be called to be a doctor,
Right.
and my intention might be to help you, but I'm not going to let you operate on me unless I know that you've gone through some processes.
I see your license, please.
Right,
Yes.
and it's great that people have the intention to help. And it's not to say that there are not extreme cases where people are divinely gifted, in those different areas. However, when you're dealing with things so sensitive as your spine, and dealing with needles, and dealing with energy, those things are sensitive, and you really kind of need to know what you're doing.
Yeah.
And the people that you really have the intention of helping should know that you have some type of training in it. It
Right.
doesn't have to be mystical and deep, quote, air quote. It doesn't have to be without training.
Right.
It doesn't have to be that.
Right.
And I think that part of the problem is that, like, people who think myths and witchcraft and all of these different things are things that you're gifted with, and like they fit into this big pot of
Right.
mysticism, and you just kind of, oh, which one am I? Oh, I'm gonna pick this one out. Yeah,
Right.
I can read auras now. That's me, and I can tell you,
Yeah.
and it's bad to me.
I think, there's a little bit of truth in that, in that you could have a natural gift,
Right.
And you could use that in your practice. Maybe if it's like being intuitive or receiving messages from spirit or being able to hear sounds or tones differently than others.
Yeah. Guilty.
Sound familiar? But you can definitely use those gifts in your practice. I would say that if you're calling yourself a Reiki master or sound healer or psychic, that you should have some type of mainstream training. Now, not
Right.
everyone, of course, depends on where you are and what, or, get certification, whatever, just to show, just even if for the only purpose to show, that if you're being questioned, sometimes you have to work in a hospital setting or in a more structured business setting. They're not just going to take you because you say your grandmother was a psychic. They want to see
Right.
that you have some works with people, that you've done this kind of work before, things like that. So, the more you learn and train, of course, the more you can enhance your natural gifts as well. Some of us, and some people, we have natural gifts, but we don't necessarily use them as that one particular thing. We integrate them into other things, and you'll find that as well. But let's do another myth, stereotype.
Okay.
Yes, the belief that you can't follow a religious practice and be a holistic practitioner. Listen. I can't even tell you the conversations I've had with people in person, on social media. I'm gonna let you go ahead. I know you got something to say about this.
No, I do. I do. I wish I had a gavel to clack. I do.
Oh my gosh.
So this one makes me cringe.
Yeah.
Because being someone who was raised in organized religion under the umbrella of Christianity, I remember.
Same here.
Yeah. I remember hearing the things that we've been talking about, like certain things being considered witchcraft and demonic or things like that. And though I was one of those people who kind of I kind of believed it, but I was also curious to know, well, why? Because even though I was raised to believe a certain thing, and when I was being led to believe that, I still wanted to have enough information so that if I was met with someone who was opposing what I believed, I would have enough information to disprove whatever they were
Right.
coming across the table
Right.
with. And so it once I did my research, it was an eyebrow raiser to me. And
And then you're like, wait a minute.
yeah. So meaning like, so when you are, I would say, like, if you're Christian, Muslim, Jewish, any of the Abrahamic beliefs, whatever the sub genre is, whatever the sub religion or
Denomination.
is, right? Yeah, that's the word I was looking for. Whatever that is, the core beliefs of those denominations are the same,
Right.
And so knowing that fear and control are the basis of those. I know it's hard for people who practice those, or it's kind of hard to hear. It was hard for me to hear, but in actuality, that's what it really is. And so when you are practicing those things and they come in this kind of a la carte fashion where you have facts and fiction and beliefs, and you're trying to make sense of it all. You have certain things that are taught that you're not supposed to subscribe to,
Right.
like the use of crystals. Like it's really hearsay that
Right.
you're not supposed to use crystals
But why?
until
But why?
or they say, well, no, don't deal with those herbalists.
Yeah.
That's
Don't
not
burn that
something you're
sage.
supposed. Yeah. That was a good one. That was a good one.
Don't get me started.
Or they'll say things like, well, yes, you should meditate, but they very rarely tell you how or why. So you have things like crystals, you have meditation, you have herbs, you have oils, all of these different things where in those holy books, they teach you how you're supposed to use them and why you're supposed to use them. And it's one of those things where if you factually look into it, there are scriptures, and this is just for the people who may be saying, okay, well, I've never seen that in the Bible before. Okay, so if you look in Ezekiel 28th chapter, around 12, 13, 14 verse, somewhere in there, it tells you, and it describes what crystals are being used and why. Exodus 28, they definitely, because that's one of the places where they talk about the breastplate that the priests wore, and what types of crystals was in the breastplate. So which leads me to understand if it was good enough for the priest in the Bible,
It's in the Bible.
to
Right.
use, like, well, why shouldn't I be using it? You know what I mean?
Right. Well, we know that they're in tombs and in structures in edifices that existed before Christianity.
And so with all of that said, like, one of those things, meditation is also a part of one of those stereotypes, and meditation being a major part of the Islamic faith, then you also have it inside of Christianity as well. You have places where it's in Genesis, it's in Isaiah, it's in Joshua, all of these different places. And then for those that are heavily in the New Testament world, we can start in the first book with Matthew, and you can find where meditation is a practice of Christianity. Now, I'm saying all of these as westernized religions because a lot of the Eastern religions, they don't have any any issues with the practice of meditation or with the practice of using crystals
Or
and things
any
like that.
holistic practice,
Right,
right.
right. So I wanted to make sure that what I'm saying is that from the westernized religions, that these are things that you don't commonly hear about it,
Right.
but the evidence is there. If you read the books, if you
Right.
study it for real, you'll see that it's all there.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think, and they don't always call it meditation, So it's like, especially in church, they don't say we're going to meditate now. They don't think of it that way. But I think a lot of people in Western religion, a lot of people do believe that myth that you can't be a holistic practitioner and be a Christian and go to church. But a lot of us combine that together. A lot of us make that a tool
Absolutely.
to like reinforce your faith, right?
Right.
The more open you are, the more, I don't want to say awakened, I hate that term, but the more you learn, the more you study, the more you're in touch with your own energy, the closer you feel to God, right? Or
Right.
whatever, whoever it is,
Or you
or whatever
should.
you call it. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the point of even in church, praying and the things that you do are to bring you closer to God. So any practice that increases that within you, that energy within you is going to, if you believe in God, is going to bring you closer to it, not farther away from it. So it's always interesting that people say that. And I think that a lot of that, I'm going to go on our next topic, but a lot of that is because there are people who do this without training. So there are people who
Yes.
who are who come off to people who believe that stereotype or that myth, that they have not been trained, that they're flaky, woo woo, whatever you want to call them. And I think a lot of that's where these myths come from. We talked about the importance of training and things like that. But it is a belief. There are people that believe you don't have to be trained, like we talked about earlier.
Right.
And you don't in everything. But if you, like we said, if you're going to do this in a mainstream setting, you want to have some kind of a mainstream certification to show, or just something to show I have learned from someone. I have some tools.
Something.
These are my official toolbox. But let's go into the other myth. The last myth I think we're talking about today is that holistic practices, energy work, crystals, Reiki, all that stuff is just fake. There's no scientific proof for it. Like people get scientific proof for everything they do, right? They're going to question the Reiki we're doing, but they don't question everything else they're doing.
Right.
Take this herb, drink this sea moss. Y'all don't even know what you're drinking. You just
Right.
do it because everybody else is doing it. Where's the scientific proof? Let me see it. Do you get a document? When you take some golden seal tea, do you get a document showing it's going to work? I pulled that one out. You like that one, golden seal?
Right.
But they demand scientific proof for energy work or crystals.
Yeah. I mean, I get, because of the information age that we're in, I can understand why they are saying that.
Yeah.
But when there is proof and you just didn't find out what the truth is and what the proof is, that's kind of where my issue kind of falls in, So, for example, I've seen, and this is speaking about Reiki, because I think in terms of holistic practices, Reiki is one of the last of the popular things that's being accepted medically.
Definitely crystals. I think crystals is below.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Reiki, then crystals.
True. And so when you're dealing with Reiki, for example, and you have doctors who have gone through their schooling, and I'm trying not to say this sarcastically. So you have doctors who went through their schooling and they learned their way of applying Western medicine, and then they try to speak about Reiki, for example, and they'll say something like, well, trying to disprove or trying not to give it support. They'll say something like, okay, well, there's no scientific proof that Reiki works. It does kind of relax the patient for the medicine to take hold and
Right.
And
And it does.
And
It
it
does.
does. And
Absolutely.
to which my argument as a Reiki master is to say, well, then you just prove that Reiki does work, because Reiki is supposed to relax you. And if you're saying that it relaxed them, period, before whatever happens after that comma, if you're saying that it does relax them, then you're saying that Reiki does work.
Right.
Now, if you're saying, oh, well, it relaxes them so the medicine can take hold and do the real work, okay, that's fine. But it does
But it
work.
works, right.
It does work. So
And
there's some type
I
of
think a
truth
lot of
in it.
times are there, these massive scientific studies with data to prove that this energy is working.
Right.
And they are doing those things, right?
Right,
They are
right.
they are taking people who are psychic and working with them and how their brain works and things like
Mm-hmm.
that. But the bottom line of it, for me personally, and I actually had a doctor confirm this for me one time, is, do you need a scientific study to tell you that it works or that it's valid or that you should try it if there are people who are living proof that it works? So if I was on, I'll give you an example. I'll use a personal example. If I was on acid reflux medicine, which I was, okay, and my blood pressure was higher than it is now, and you tell me that I'm going to have to take medicine for the rest of my life for this acid reflux, and I tell you, no, I am not. I am not. And I start implementing natural things, and I start doing energy work on myself, and I seek out people to help me balance my stress levels and my energy and my blood pressure and my, response to things. And I no longer need the medicine. Do I still have to take it if I don't have this condition anymore?
Right.
So when I go to the
Right.
doctor and I ask her, this is a different doctor a specialist told me I was going to have to take it forever. It's a condition that you have forever. It's a disease. And I'm like, nah.
Right.
Because it's stress induced, and things that are stress induced can be changed.
Yep, they can be controlled.
So I'm not saying don't take blood pressure medicine. I'm saying that you can lower your blood pressure. You absolutely can. I'm saying you can reduce your stress, which reduces the acid buildup in your body, right? Your inflammation, all that stuff is stress, can be somewhat controlled by stress depending on where you are. So I went from whatever the mainstream big pharma drug was, Protonics, before it was made into a generic, it was like $100 a bottle. I was like, no. To whatever Nexium, the ones over the counter, to some apple cider vinegar, to this, to that, to no medicine, And I asked my doctor when I went for my physical, do I have to keep taking this medicine if I don't have any symptoms and there's no damage? You guys have already looked, there's no damage. She goes, no, if it's not broken, we don't need to fix it. So, I mean, it works. So it worked for me. So I know it works. But
Right.
I think people want that. They want a doctor to say, Reiki will help you.
Right.
Acupuncture will help you. And a lot of doctors are saying that now. They are blurring that line. It is taking maybe some money out of their pockets, but when we're talking about the general well-being of everybody, we know that stress reduction is a big factor in everything that's going on in the world, and that's one of the main things that they tell you to go back to, right?
Right.
When whatever's wrong with you, if you reduce your stress, your diet changes, and we know that energy works for people. We know that touch makes people feel better. You hug people, right? You lay hands on them.
Yep.
All of those things. Babies who are held are healthier than babies who are not held, right? So there's we know that touch is an actual thing. It actually works.
Right.
Energy exchange works. We
Right.
know it.
Right.
And I get that crystals are in question because crystals are pretty, and it's also a very big topic now. So when everything's trendy,
yeah,
people are
I was
going
gonna
to
say,
question.
yep.
Like, okay, I need proof it works. But again, if holding a crystal makes you feel more confident, or if it calms you, or putting a crystal under your pillow makes you sleep better, does it work? If it works, okay.
Right.
There's your proof right there. It's working, right? So I feel saying it's fake is not really a fair term.
Right. And then there's the thing where something like you just said, if something is working, it works. And I think that again in today's society, the way that we are taught that if there's a definition, scientific definition, explanation behind it, then okay, now it's okay.
Right.
But
Now it's valid.
sometimes just because you don't understand how something works doesn't mean that it doesn't work.
Right.
You know? And so with just because you don't understand how a crystal works, or if you don't understand how energy is moved throughout your body to on a molecular level to make you feel a certain way. If you don't understand the terminology, I know I'm going off a little bit, but if you don't understand the terminology of chakras or energy centers and how they work, then it doesn't mean that they don't work. It just means
Right.
that you don't understand how they work.
They want proof.
Right. Yeah. It doesn't mean that they
But
don't
it's
work.
interesting because those same people are apprehensive, but they are in search of something outside of,
Right.
I don't want to say outside of medicine, because some of us have to take medicine for things. That their science is a good thing.
Yes, it is.
It's a very good thing.
It is.
But you can use these things with science. You can use these things as your own to keep yourself well in general. One of our colleagues posted on social media today about he wants to avoid hospitals at all costs, and I was like, "Amen." That's exactly what I feel. I feel like people want to be more in control of their body. People want to be in control of their health. They want to. In addition to going getting their physicals regularly, taking the medicine they're supposed to take, they want to make sure that they're doing everything they can to keep their body aligned, keep their stress down, keep your inflammation down. We know all the things that cause problems, right? And keep you out of the hospital if you don't want to be there.
Yeah, and I mean, and to culturally speaking, I think it's interesting. Like when you go back to African civilizations, you go to Kemetic culture, science, religion, all of those things that we as a westernized civilization separate, they were all one thing. Like religion and science,
Yeah,
all were
and
one
witchcraft.
thing. It was all the
Herbalism.
all one
Right.
thing. It was just a way of
Right.
life. And I think that if we were to look at it as unified versus, oh well, religion is over here and science is over here, I think we would be in a little
Oh, yeah.
better.
But we know it's also
place.
money.
Yeah.
Yes, it's also
Yeah,
money.
it is.
And
It
people,
is.
yeah.
It is. It is.
Because a lot of us, Kemetic culture, also any I don't want to say cultures where people have had to heal themselves. Even my ancestors who would make, they made things out of herbs and poultices and stuff like that, and things for your headaches and stuff. They didn't go to the doctor for stuff like that. They didn't have money to go to doctors like that, and they didn't do that. They did their own self-healing. And you can look at that kind of stuff as witchcraft if you want to. I mean, I'm going to take this stuff and make this herb and put it on my body, and but how is that different than what we're doing now? We're just calling it something different, right?
Yeah.
We can go on and on.
We absolutely could. We could.
All right. But let's move into our other segment that we always have to close things out.
Yeah.
Keep your balance. What are you going to tell us
We
today?
want to get rooted some more. All right. I'm going to start this one with a quote. The quote is, "Not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it's faced."
Yes.
And that is by James Baldwin. So today, when we talk about keeping your balance, we kind of want to focus in on the art of observation and acceptance,
Okay.
acknowledgement, however you want to say it. And really what it means is that not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it's faced. It means basically you have to make an observation. You have to see what is going on around you. And then by default, you have to acknowledge those situations in your mind and make it make it consciously and subconsciously. You have to make some type of observation and acknowledgement of that. And if you aren't careful, you can take those observations and go down the path of judgment and opinion. So like a lot of times, like we were speaking earlier, you can just see something or hear about something, you can observe it and be like, oh, and then you go down the wrong path.
Right.
You can acknowledge it and still go down the wrong path. But there's a moment of contemplation and research, that you should be able to take.
Right.
And in balancing yourself, you have to understand that energy is always moving. It's always constant. There's nowhere that energy stops. And so if we understand that, then we know that even our thoughts are energy, which I'm not going to go into it now, but your thoughts are energy and then therefore become what you say. I know a lot of different religions talk about, what it is that you say and it becoming a reality.
Right.
Both religiously and non-religiously, that is a main factor that is true, no matter how you slice it. So going to the bottom of that is that energy is energy. And so you have to be aware of what you're intaking subconsciously, and then when you notice it and you observe it and then you acknowledge what it is, you have to know what you want to do with that particular energy. Like what are you going to do to deal with it? And so it reminds me of an African quote that says, know thyself. And there are different interpretations of that. But in knowing yourself, you have to turn and face what it is that you're observing. You have to turn and face it. And to know yourself means, okay, what am I getting from this? What am I acknowledging? What do I need to do with it? Where am I placing it? And from a place of balancing yourself, you need to make sure that you are not doing one of those negative things that we talked about earlier, where you're just drawing a conclusion and making an assumption and going down that pathway. And when you do that, you'll notice that when you address things like that, it will help you in your self-esteem and your self-knowledge. Self-esteem perspective, meaning that you put yourself in a place where you're looking more inward than you are outward.
Right.
With whatever situations that you are
That's
observing.
all situations.
Yeah, it is. It is.
You really should be doing that with all situations. That
Right.
would definitely keep you balanced if you
Right.
just practice that on a regular basis.
Right. And so when you observe something, when you acknowledge something, in order to deal with it so that you can face it, what it does for you is it helps balance you, it helps ground you, it helps bring a lot of inner peace. That's what I found, actually. It brings a lot of inner peace, and it allows you to know what to do with it. Do I release it? Do I sit with it? It really helps you do all of those things. So I'm going to go back and repeat the quote again so people don't think that I ran off. So
Swing it back around.
Right. Not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it's faced. So not everything that is faced can be changed. So just because you see it, just because you acknowledge it, just because you observe it, doesn't necessarily mean that you got to put your mouth on it. It doesn't necessarily mean that. It doesn't mean that it's going to shift, but at the same token, everything that that needs to be changed, that can be changed, has to be faced.
Don't you think that's kind of the
way
way we deal with that a lot with clients too, where there's people that are, just say, for example, really angry a lot, and they're operating from that angry point. Well, that anger comes from somewhere, right?
Right.
So basically what you're saying is step back, breathe, observe, right? And you're like, why am I, I'm just so stressed out all the time. I don't know why my blood pressure's so high and blah, 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 and this and that. Now you're like, wait a minute.
Observe.
Let's look at
Right.
what's going on. And you have to kind of want to change it, right? You have to have that desire. Most of the time, like this kind of quote we're talking about is you're not going to be able to change it until you look at it. Until you say now just because I'll look at it doesn't mean it's going to change. I might still be angry all the time.
Right.
But I can't start at all until I stop and look at it.
Right.
Anything like that. Any of those types of things. Whether it's a health thing, whether it's a behavioral practice. Why do these things keep happening to me? Yeah. Why am I always this? Why do people keep saying this? Those kind of things. If you are looking for a change in your life, whether it's health or whatever it is, to be balanced, you have to stop and look at it first.
Right. Once you acknowledge
Look within.
Yes. Know thyself.
This sounds like shadow work.
Oh, boy.
Dun, dun, dun. We'll have to do a show on that.
It does point to that, though.
It does.
It does.
It's definitely shadow work is definitely that. We can say that's not just shadow work, but shadow work is definitely that.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Right.
All right.
Yeah, I think.
So we went over quite a few myths. There's certainly more.
Yeah, we have more to say.
But like we said, Google is free. I do think a lot of people get stuck in myths and stereotypes about holistic practices because of what they were told from day one, being a child, all the way up. I know that's the way it was for me. There's things that I'm just like, I don't know why I think this. Why do I think that? Why, and if you ask people, like I had somebody hit me up one time and say, crystals, don't mess with those crystals. They're dangerous. I was like, what do you mean? How are they dangerous? Well, it just says that they're dangerous. Well, where does it say they're dangerous? Can you show me? They can't. Right. They've heard this.
Right.
They don't know that it's not true. So
right.
I think it's an ongoing battle. Let's put it that way. Hopefully we can dispel some of them, but Yeah,
if I have my way, we're going to dispel a lot of them. All right. Yeah. So that's it for today's episode of Mixed Vibes. And as usual, we'll say please hit that subscribe button. If you want to see or hear more about the Healing Flame Collective, you can visit us at all social media platforms at The Healing Flame Collective.
The Healing
Flame Collective. Right. And thank you so much, and we will see you next time. We hope you enjoyed this episode of Mixed Vibes. If you liked this episode, remember to subscribe to our channel. You can find us on social media at The Healing Flame Collective, and you can email us at thehealingflamecollective@gmail.com with your topic ideas. See you next time.